Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and if you have an embroidery machine, I have a fun project for you to do. It is this nice big sunflower. And yes, this was all done in embroidery machine. It was quilted and embroidered all at the same time. I do hope you join me where we cover some really interesting tips and techniques to make this go together. This sunflower wall hanging is from the Hoop Sisters. The collection does come with both of the patterns, and this is going to give you all of the step-by-step directions and all of the files for the embroidery. I'm going to need some yellow, so I have 2 yellows for the sunflowers, the leaf, the flower center, and I do have binding and backing. I'm also going to need those threads to match those colors. For the border and the background, I will be using white. And 2 additional things that they recommend, which I'm really looking forward to, is Vanish Light thread. This is a water-soluble thread. Once it gets wet, it disappears. I will also be using their Battleizer. Now the Battleizer is quite different. It does look like quilt batting. However, it has a built-in stabilizer. So you will not see me use any stabilizer at all in the embroidery machine because it does come built in. I have some fun other tools that I'm going to be able to use along the way, but one additional thing that they like to do is to use this wool batting. And this wool batting is going to get stitched right inside that applique. So our flower is going to have some dimension. This is always optional, but it definitely is fun to use. This wall hanging is made with little tiles and we get to put them together. So it's not one big piece, we're going to make it and then add them together. And because I will be embroidering, I would recommend using embroidery needles. Before we go to the machine, I do like to get everything organized. We have all of those little panels, so I've separated the directions so I can just take this and go to the machine and work on it. If we're going to use this batting to make it a little puffy, we will need to take this little batting and turn them into little pillows. What we want to do is compress just those edges, and that way the foot doesn't get held up on this batting. To compress those sides and turn them into little pillows, we can take a piece of paper, put that paper along the edge, and just press right along that edge. I like to use parchment paper. I can see through it. This is not wax paper, it's parchment. Being able to see through it means I can press all the way around the edges. So I'm going to take my iron. I don't need the steam, I just need a hot setting, and I just want to iron that edge. Put the iron there for a second and press. When we look inside, we'll see that that little edge is compressed. I'm going to press around those 4 sides. So we have thin edges, so it looks a little bit more like a pillow than the thick edges. This edge will not come back up, so we must make sure that we only press around the edges. If not, it will stay flat, and we do want this puffy. We just want to press enough so that the machine can stitch on this edge to hold it down. I'm going to be using my maxi hoop on my Bernina, and you would find that it will probably center, but I'm going to move the design down to the bottom so that I can get one tile here and move one up. So I have only that Battleizer attached onto the hoop, and I'm going to put that right on the machine. As I work on the project, I'm going to go from the Vanish Light to an embroidery thread and back and forth as needed. The Vanish Light will actually disappear with a little bit of water, which means this is going to be used for basting. So I never have to worry about any threads peeking out from one side or the other. So I will only have the embroidery thread showing. So for the first few steps, I will be using the Vanish thread. So I will be following step by steps. It will tell me what thread to use and everything along the way. So the first thing I'm going to do is put that water-soluble thread in and do a placement line. And I have no stabilizer here. It's all going to take care of it on its own. Once that step is done, I will be able to put that wool batting pillow in. And I'm going to be able to follow those placement lines. And the next step will be a zigzag to anchor that down. And that's why we did that little pressing along the edges so that the foot would not get caught up on this nice thick batting. You can see how nicely that's stitching over top of that compressed area. I'm going to continue with that same thread and do another placement line, which will be the background fabric. And you can see that that really has no problem stitching over top of that nice big batting. Now that I have that placement, I can put that background fabric in. I'm still using that wash away thread. I will only be trimming this inside piece, and I'm going to leave all of that extra fabric on the outside. Now, a little secret to trim along this batting is to take the scissors and start up at the top and run that blade down and then cut. So we're going to take that scissor and run it down, and that way it doesn't get caught up on the batting. From here, I'm going to change that water-soluble thread and do some quilting. And we must be sure to remember to change that thread because we do not want our quilting to actually wash out. We're going to work on that sunflower now, so we need to do a few more placement lines, so we're going to change that thread. Not only is this water-soluble thread very thin, but we do have the bonus of it washing away. And I have no problem with that thread stitching. I have just the regular bobbin thread in. It really does give me a beautiful placement line that I don't have to worry about. And I'm going to add my first color on my sunflower. This daisy is going to be a raw edge daisy, which means we're just going to have heavy stitching around this area. We are not going to have the satin stitch covering these little petals. So I do want to leave a little bit here, and it's going to fray and have such a soft, pretty look. And I could just place that next fabric over top, and I still have that water-soluble thread on. And I can do one more trim. From here, I'm going to be able to use my embroidery thread and keep stitching all the way around, following those directions. So by adding the layers of that vanishing thread and the embroidery thread will give us not only a finished look, but it really does save on that bulk. But look how nice that battleizer worked. There was no stabilizer. It's all built right in. And even with that heavy stitching, you can see how well it held up. I did not need any stabilizer at all. In order to maximize my battleizer, I did embroider all of those tiles together on that one piece. So each one of these, I just kept moving the hoop as I went along. And to keep track of things, I did just label the number or the lettering system right on that battleizer. So now when I trim this apart, I'm going to be able to transfer those letters or numbers onto the back. So we do need to trim them down, and we do have some fun tools that will make it easy. There is a trimming tool that's going to make not only trimming these little pieces down, but other projects. And it's called the Trimmer by George. It is a ruler, so we have that acrylic edge that we can use the rotary cutter on, but we also have a little lip. And that lip is to hold this fabric down so that we can trim. That fabric will sit right along that edge so that when we fold it back, you can see that that extra fabric is going to stay out of the way, and then we can trim. Just give it a little rub so it's nice and tight. And I would recommend a larger rotary cutter because we do have some extra size here. And then just go right along that edge. That batting is going to come off, but the fabric stays on. And we need to do that all the way around. So here's one block. All of that batting has been trimmed down. We need to trim 1/4 inch all the way around the outside. We can take that second side and use that 1/4 inch measurement and trim 1/4 inch. I'm going to put that 1/4 inch mark right along that edge of the batting and trim. All of my tiles are done, trimmed. I'm able to put them together. And I do have a guide where I can put them together. And my lettering system is right here. So I'm going to be able to follow my letters with the guide, but they really do go together like puzzle pieces. So if you don't have them lettered, they will be easy to put together. I'm going to put them together in rows. Let's take a look at that second row. I have that main body of the flower, the one side and the next side. You can see how they're going to go together quite nicely. All we need to do now is match up those seams and stitch that 1/4 inch. So we're going to be stitching right along the edge of that batting. We're not stitching onto it, just right along the edge. When we stitch those sides on, that picture is going to be finished. There may be places when we put this together that we're going to see our basting row. And in this case, you can see that little basting row right along that top. That basting row was done with that water-soluble thread. So with a little bit of water, that is going to disappear. And that's the advantage of using a water-soluble for your basting threads. The last thing I like to do is wet it and block it. The wetting will help all of those additional threads dissolve. And I press it with my hand to make those seams flat. And then I pin the perimeter and then I let it dry. At the same time, I will just give a little scratch to all of these raw edges for this and the leaves. And once it's dried, I can take out those pins. Because this has already been quilted, it does have that battleizer on it. I'm able to do that wetting. I would rather wet it and block it than over press it. You can see how nice and flat that is. That also gives me a chance to make sure that it's nice and square. And you can see how pretty that raw edge applique is on the leaves and on that sunflower. This particular piece did not have a back, so I'm going to be able to put a back on it. And then I'm going to use a monofilament thread. And this thread, I'm going to do a little bit of quilting. It's just to anchor this back on. It's already quilted, it's already appliqued. I just want to hold that back on. The monofilament thread you will not see, and that's exactly what I want. I want all of that embroidery to really be the focus point. The collection from the Hoop Sisters did come with that wall hanging, but it also comes with a table runner. So you could make this as big as you want, or just use the individual flowers. And you could put those individual flowers in many places. It is a quilt as you go. The embroidery machine really does all of the work. The Hoop Sisters do have some great designs, and this just happens to be one of them. I'll put some links in the description so you can check them out. And as always, thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I do have a newsletter. It's all free under Sew Very Easy. Thanks again for joining me. Bye for now.